Welcome back everybody. Here we go with another odd project. This is another strange little film actually, because it's not just of a model being built. It's a series of projects all based around the mighty Panzer IV, an absolutely incredible tank considering it was designed and pretty much there before the Second World War started. Goodness knows what the other countries, they all remain nameless, were up to at the time, but it wasn't exactly that secret, so they should have realised what was coming. That's the cat burbling away in the background. Anyway, Panzer IV. So there are several Panzer IV projects going on. This is a very interesting pair of 1/72 easy to build models, which I'll get into later. I also found a very old Panzer IV model which I made as a teenager, and not all the bits are necessarily with it, so it could be a bit of an interesting project. And also those Tamiya figures who clamber all over it. I built those to go with it, and now I've lost them. Oh look, this is a souped up bit of film, don't worry about what I'm pointing at there. And also there's I've got the Panzer I just mentioned is 135th, and a 135th Zvezda Panzer, which will be a long time in the making, but I will get round to it eventually, everything permitting. So yeah, the Panzer IV. The thing is, I'd noticed I'm kind of doing German tanks in a chronological order, so let's have a Panzer IV project at this point. There will be a quick look at some of those models I mentioned, and then I'll get round to building these two at the end of this one. You're gonna like this. I opened a box. It wasn't what I expected to find inside, if that makes sense as a sentence at all. I found this when I was actually looking for some DVDs. Here we go. It's a 1/35th scale Panzer IV. I have no real recollection of it whatsoever, and it's clearly in a bit of a mess. There's some of its parts. Not the sum of its parts. Plus some rifles and an American machine gun, possibly of a slightly smaller scale. Quite clearly it used to have the spacer armour, because a tiny bit of it is left, whereas things like rear mud flaps and things, we've got one, the other one's completely missing, and the side turret door was partly gone. That's going to be a nuisance. What I did notice is it's been sprayed in several shades of a sort of sandy colour, darker in there, as I started to do as a teenager. But look, this is the giveaway. This weird glossy chocolatey brown is a spray my dad had. In fact, he had a couple of cans of it, and we had a car, and I can't remember what it was called, and we had it in the mid-70s because it was this colour, and it had a stuck on vinyl surface on the roof. Those were the days. The other thing is, I had a great habit of doing that. Anything that was a cylinder I'd fill with glue, and then you could dent it. So this is old. I do not know who the manufacturer is. I do not remember making it, but as I say, I remember the techniques. This is very me as a teenager. So what are we going to do with this? I might stick that plate over the side door hatch just until something else comes along. Just tack it on with a little bit of glue. And then in the box are these. And I thought these were brilliant. These are Tamiya 1/35th scale, I can't remember what they're called. But they fit on the back of the tank. So there was a plan once. There's a lot of plans like that in my house. So let's see if we can just settle them on the back of the tank for a start. Well, the brown was too dark for a start. Some of the shapes are alright. I can work with it. But it hasn't quite... has not quite gone the way I anticipated. Oh, and I noticed there's some scuffs along the back here that suggest it had a stowage bin. What is this? Oh, I know what it is. It's a Panzer IV. But what? When did I get this model? Anyway, straying from the camouflage. Yeah, that's going to take some weathering. It's not really helping yet, is it? You can see. Oh, that's not very good. Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that one. That'll get a film of its own in the end. And now, a Zvezda 1/35th scale, Panzer IV, Aus, whatever. And look, it's a really weird colour plastic, isn't it? But, well, we're going to spray over that and paint over it and all sorts. There are millions of parts. Oh, by the way, we're only having a quick look at this. We'll come back to this later. But yeah, millions of parts. So it will be a slow build. Anyway, let's actually build something. Here we go. Well, here's a bit of a change in several ways. First of all, having given some light tanks from the early part of the Second World War a go, I thought I would go for the Panzer III, but there weren't any in the shops. It's obviously a step up from the Panzer II. It's a lot heavier, and it would make a very interesting contrast with the British Vickers light tank. So like I say, they didn't have one in the shops, so I've got this. It's a box, like, as I say, very different. It's two tanks, Panzer IVs, Mark F1 and F2. Let's face it, Ausf is not a word that rolls off the tongue for me, so I'm going to call them Mark 1 and Mark 2. I assume that's a Mark 1 and that's a Mark 2. One has a longer barrel than the other. Panzer IVs are very easy to spot because they have 4 idler wheels, and the Panzer III, which looks very similar, has only 3. Very clever. I'm sure the Germans didn't do that on purpose. The really interesting bit though is over here. Fast assembly kit, especially developed for wargame use. Right, there's all the bits per tank. So not many, which is why it's fast. Never done this before. I just don't get the fact that wargamers have to have special models. Are they not interested in making the things? Are they sort of overexcited and just want to get on with their wargaming? I would have thought it'd be part of the fun to construct and develop your own stuff. I've got a feeling something else lies behind all this. They've probably just come up with some very simple models and wondered how they can market them. But one way or the other, I thought I'd give them a go. I mean, you get 2 in a box. Very immature of me, but it sounds like fun. And I enjoyed the fast assembly, shall we call it, of the Hurricane, the somewhat earlier Airfix Hurricane. So, look at this. Grey and sand colour, different versions, obviously take your choice. Simple markings, nice little colour code at the bottom. Could be an interesting and fun little adventure in model making. I'll open it up and I'll have a go. Well, I managed to get the box open, nicely sealed, I have to say, and the bag opened. Looks like all the bits are there. Here they are as they're sort of packaged straight out of the bag. And look at that for a bunch of transfers. You expect me to line up a series of numbers evenly? Crumbs. I think I might have to stick with like single digits. The detail and the moulding's nice and good, nice and detailed. No, the detail and the moulding is detailed, whatever. You know what I mean. Clean and sharp stuff. Here's one of those things that I've talked about with the 2 other tanks, the Vickers light tank and the Panzer II. And here we see a bit of an extreme answer to the track problem. I still think that tracks, I know this is the simple version for the Wargamers, but I still think the tracks would be good if you had like that strip as a single piece and then the curve as a single piece and then that strip, or maybe this divided in two or so. I've seen a few tanks in real life and there is a tendency for this area to sag a little, just a little, between the idlers, and sometimes if there's a bit of speed on, this area gets a little bow in it because it's being pulled at high speed and then hitting the ground. So there's room for options. Yeah, so I won't complain any further about that because I knew it was a simple and quick to make model. That's alright then. Here's the other tank. Upside down obviously. I mean the detail actually on that is pretty good, isn't it? That's alright. There we go. And we have long and short barrel options for the different versions. So basically each sprue, let's put one above the other, each sprue is exactly the same. That's alright, we know we're buying two tanks. So, interesting. I'm fascinated by this. They should come up nice and quick. And I think I will do one sand colour and one grey. And we'll think about the colours later on. Any camouflages and that kind of thing. But what I'll do now is I will go and spray them, as I've done before. It's a nice, simple and quick way of getting an undercoat at least. So off I go. I have sprayed both tanks. And before we have a good look at that, I've actually got the instructions out, and they're precisely the same as the very small image on the box. They're sort of computer messed around with photos, I suppose they are. And it's all very clear and very nice and easy looking. Here's the grey one. It's the same grey that I used for the Panzer II, so it may be a little bit pale. Perhaps I should have splashed out and got a slightly darker one to come up with a contrast. And here is the sand coloured one, and it's actually it's very interesting. I went into Halfords a little while ago for a bit of touch-up paint, and I saw that they branched out into all kinds of colours. So I bought a green and a brownish. Look at that. Khaki, ultra matte, and it is very nice and matte. There's the messy nozzle. So it's a good in-between colour. Not quite the sand that a lot of German tanks are, but they were produced in a kind of a wide range according to which factory was actually producing them. They didn't seem to be too strict about colour, or at least the shade of the colour. So that one I'm alright with. I'm happy with that. I sprayed them outside because today is nice and calm, actually. I'm quite pleased about that. Just in case anybody's worried about my lungs or the lungs of anybody following suit, sprayed it outside. It's not too windy, so it didn't blow all over the show. But also I put it in a box and cut a large hole on the outside of the box. So that way any spray that is sort of flying around is largely contained, but also is bouncing around and making contact with the model as much as possible. I've thrown it in the bin, I should have shown you. I did know a bloke a few years ago who'd set up a vacuum cleaner and everything. So he'd got a box, the vacuum cleaner pipe went into the box, and then he put the vacuum cleaner out the window or something, and that way he was blowing all that out. But don't do it indoors, I think, or do it in a shed or a garage or something. Well ventilated, they always say. When I was a kid I did spray, I think it was a ship, a battleship, this kind of grey colour, in my mum's kitchen when she was out. I thought it was a brilliant idea because the cooker had one of those fans at the top. It didn't work, and by the time she got home there was still spray in the air, visible in the air hanging around, and she didn't like the smell and went nuts. So I learned from my mistakes slowly and gradually. Wherever possible, just do it outside. So I suppose next, just putting it together. Is the way the gun goes into the turret. The gun itself runs, oh, so there goes the washing machine. The gun itself obviously runs there, but it runs through the housing, through that part of the turret, into this roller, and out the other side. So it's a single consistent rod, which works really well, given the simplicity of the whole thing. And then that little hole there takes the strange thing. I used to know, oh hello, I used to know what that was, but that was when I was a teenager. That thing, anyway. Oh, blurry monster, come on, quick before the washing machine. That's a nice part as well. The way the storage bin at the back is attached to the commander's hatch cupola, and then that slots over the pin there. Given that this is a simple model, that is a very clever way to do it, and it all fits rather nicely. So there's the turret done, as far as I can tell. Little bit of a gap there where the cupola and the stowage bin attach. Oh, I thought the washing machine had finished. Gives you an idea of how quick this model was making itself, doesn't it? Never mind. And then there's all that, looking sturdy. You can see the massive fixing kind of holes and pins. I've never seen that before. And then you just see where the back plate sits in there. Very different process in many respects. It was quite refreshing. The three main sections. I'm going to give the hull and the track area a bit of a spray with a grubby colour. So right now I'm going to put the turret on that gigantic pin. What fun that is. Well done. That's just, you know, they've really gone for it there, haven't they? Well, the turret nearly didn't fit on the pin at all. Pin's a bit of an understatement, isn't it? There was a huge gap and it wobbled a little, and in the end what I had to do was press, I was going to say the fuselage, but press the main sheet of plastic in around that split, the other end of it, which is a split pin. So I had to press that up in a very low level kind of dome and force the turret on at the same time. So 2 thumbs pressing down there, fingers pressing down there simultaneously, and pushed, I suppose what was a downwards concave surface up into a convex one. And then of course, as take your hands off, the plastic relaxes and it pulls the turret down. Slightly uneven line, never mind. Right, so at this point I've found the parts for the sand coloured one, and what I've got to do is stick the tracks on this one, and then the one last bit on the back, I can't remember which bit, and there's the grey one coming along nicely. So the weathering's going okay, quite happy with that. Doesn't look as good through the camera as it does in real life, but we'll see how it looks on the screen. There we go, that bit, which goes on around about there. It's the exhaust, isn't it? It's not the fuel tank. Yeah, it's got to be the exhaust. Otherwise, where's the exhaust? I used to know. Well, the simplicity of the models is counterbalanced by the incredible level of detail. I know I was sceptical about simplicity and why it should be so incredibly simple. I know it's for wargamers, but you know, as I said. Anyway, it was still enjoyable to do. I did enjoy doing these. So there we go, that's what counts. They have, they've kind of come out how I hoped. So that's a positive. And there'll be a nice addition to any collection. I really am quite surprised by the level of detail. Well done. So good stuff. I think they do a few more like this, and there's some other companies that do these really fast and easy little models. So no offence to highly complex multiple piece models, but wow, just a bit of fun. Nice one. And what a really good tank, isn't it? The Panzer IV is the stuff of true legend. And what an incredible stage to get to, even before the Second World War. Really quite remarkable. So well done Germany once again, way ahead of the curve. Still a little bit over-engineered though, aren't they? The great boxy stepped hull was quite a problem, and the sort of I'll just change the focus by dragging the camera across the base. Good grief. And the I know you can do it, it's not a surprise, just a surprise I managed to do it quite like that. Who would believe it? Anyway, the multi-angular turret as well. All of these things will go when we meet the mighty T-34. But for now, we are looking at virtually didn't do that very well, virtually the forefront of tank design. Yeah, I'd say so. At the very beginning of the Second World War. Nice one. And we did survive the collapse of the set dressing. Anyway, there we are, Panzer IV, landmark tank. And I know the Germans appreciated some of the French tanks, but the design, shape and so on of the French ones never quite caught on. Somewhat of a survival of the First World War, really. Whereas this really is the future, isn't it? To a degree, until the T-34 hits town, as I said. But anyway, lovely Panzer IVs. Well, there we are with a basic sample of some of the Panzer IV projects to come, and these two neat little 1/72nd jobs. They are, do you know, I'm enjoying them a lot. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed a slightly different format, somewhat thrust upon me by making a mess of painting certain tanks and losing the figures. So yeah, well, I don't know what's next. Somewhere in a box I've got a mosquito. That would be nice, wouldn't it? I don't think we'll be seeing that one anytime soon, but anyway, there'll be something to fill a gap for the time being. That sounds very more sort of negative, doesn't it? I've got loads of films that I can finish off, so I'll finish one off shortly and we'll see something else. Probably another tank, I think, at this rate, but aircraft will be along before you know it. Thanks for watching. Nice to be back. Who knows what's going to happen next, eh?